This is Linux Unplugged, episode 27 for February 11th, 2014. Welcome to Linux Unplugged, your weekly Linux talk show that's watching the Debian mailing list and it's fresh all out of popcorn. My name is Chris.
My name is Matt.
Hey, Matt, here we are. We actually got the first word of it on Sunday as we were wrapping up last, and it looked like Debian was going to go with systemd. And I thought, okay, that's good, but let's not run with it just yet, because that'd have been crazy. Because Debian doesn't just make decisions like that, right? They don't just... Boy, it has been an interesting couple of days. And I know a lot of you are thinking, why do we care so much about an init system? Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit. There's a lot of actual larger ramifications. I think a lot of people are very aware that Debian is the base of so many distributions. And a lot of things are changing in the Linux world, and at the same time, some of these things are coming together. And that's what the systemd discussion isn't just happening at Debian, right? It's been happening across all of the Linux distributions for a couple of years now. And the Debian one's been one of the most watched, and unfortunately, not really been the greatest example of open community collaboration.
True.
And we could get into that whole discussion about should this stuff be on a public mailing list, but it was. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about that too, and if maybe we've sort of sent a bad signal to the rest of the industry. We'll see. I don't want to overstate it, but I think we'll discuss that aspect of it too. I think at the end of this episode, if you haven't been sure why this has been a topic of interest for so many people, I hope by the time we're done, you will know why. You'll feel like you've got a good grasp on it. Hey, Matt, before we go too far,
yes,
we should do a Valve update.
Yes.
I just thought this was really cool. I wanted to update a story we ran a couple of weeks ago and Unplugged about Valve donating games to Debian developers. Well, they're expanding that program now to Ubuntu developers too. How about that?
That is exciting because it's not only showing that they're, because I mean, the Debian thing could have been seen as a fluke, but I think the fact that they're being inclusive to the Ubuntu guys as well is that they're saying, look, we really want Linux to take off and we want to embrace those that put their time and energy into making Linux awesome.
Yeah,
and so they really get that.
1204 was their, that was the distro they recommended. And
that's right.
Yeah, so, man, if they get Steam boxes, this is your chance now, guys. Go sign up, become a Debian developer or an Ubuntu developer. Get your Steam box, because you never know. If anything's going to happen, that's going to be next. And there was another Valve story today too. Oh, that's right. We were just talking about it on the pre-show. Steam Dev Days. The videos from Steam Dev Days are now up, and there's some of interest. One we talked about on last is this switching to Linux, where Iculus went through some of the reasons why switching to Linux, porting your game to Linux is not nearly as bad as everybody thinks it is. It's called Getting Started with Linux Game Development. Anyways, all of the videos I think that are available now are linked on the steamdevdays.com page, and I'm going to go through some of them, and if there's something really crazy, I'll pull out and put it in Linux Action Show on Sunday, but otherwise, you can just go check it out on your own, because there's so many on there that I'm sure we'd only be able to cover a tiny, tiny percentage of what was actually said. Speaking of last, on Sunday, one last little bit of business before we get into our main topic of the day. Sunday, Linux Action Show, 10 a.m. Pacific, jblive.tv, the place to be, because it's episode 300.
Oh my goodness, big episode.
Huge. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about in episode 300. We're going to celebrate. It's not going to be, I haven't really decided how much of a regular Linux Action Show it's going to be. Probably depends on what's going on in the week.
Sure.
But we have some stuff planned to talk about, so I'd really love to have you guys there, because it's a good one to join live, and I think we'll have a good active community. Maybe we can break the IRC server. Maybe we'll load it up with so many people. So I'd love to have you there this Sunday. That'll be February 16th. I think that's it. Yeah, 16th.
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
10 a.m.
That sounds
Pacific.
right. And I think it's definitely one of those things to where if you don't normally show up for a live show, make this the live show you show up for. I think you'll be pretty glad you did.
Yeah, you know what? It's better than getting bit by a dog.
This is true, especially if that dog wants to bite you.
Yeah.
That was redundant, but you get the point. Okay.
Point well reiterated, Matt. All right, well, so I want to take a second here and just thank Ting. Ting is one of our sponsors this week, and they're doing something really awesome. So get started. Go to linux.ting.com, and if you're watching this live today, go over to their blog. I don't know of any other cell phone company that would have done this. Ting now, right now, if you go to ting.com/blog, has the message up that a lot of sites are running with today because it's, take back the privacy day on the internet, and they have the call your legislators numbers and the submit for an email address right here. Fact, the NSA is so out of control that the authors of the Patriot Act are sponsors of leading a bill to rein it in. So they have these. We have one running right now on the Jupiter Broadcasting website too. Let's see if you go over to so here's the Jupiter Broadcasting website, thedaywefightback.org. A lot of sites are doing this. I just thought it was so awesome that Ting is one of them. They didn't need to do this. I mean, but they did, because Ting they're really kind of internet savvy, and that's one of the things I like about them quite a bit. It shows in their dashboard too. They have a really awesome and easy to use dashboard that follows web standards. In fact, even supports the Mozilla login system, which I like a lot. We've had one of their developers on Coda Radio before to talk about it. And what's great about Ting is there's no contracts, there's no early termination fees. You only pay for what you use. Each flat line is $6, and then, taxes. And then it's just your usage. They take your message, your megabytes, and your minutes. They add them all up at the end of the month, whatever bucket you fall into. That's what you pay. It's really straightforward. You buy the device outright. You own it. That way you're not paying some sort of subsidized price over the time of the device. It's yours. And one of the great things about Ting is every plan includes hotspot and tethering, and it's just part of your data usage. You don't have to be in some sort of special plan. You just turn it on. That feature built into Android? You should be able to just turn it on. That's why Google put it there. And that's how Ting works. Ting also has awesome no-hold customer service. You can give them a call anytime between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern. And an actual person answers the phone. What a concept. I've been able to activate like 4 Ting devices, though, all through the dashboard. It's really great. They have an iPhone and Android app to manage your account as well. And you can check them out by going to linux.ting.com. That'll take $25 off your first device, or $25 off your first month if you already have a compatible device. Check out their BYOD page. I'm telling you, I've been using them for over a year, and I love it. They just announced, too, that you can buy the Nexus Red phone from the Google Play Store and put it on Ting. Just get the Ting.
That's cool.
Yeah. And you know what was actually really cool? In fact, I should go find this right now. So not only do they have, not only are they like really savvy about the net in general, but if I go over to their Google Plus page, I'm gonna wait for this bad boy to load up. Check out. Here's how they posted it. This is on their Google Plus page.
Okay, so they did this on social media. Cool.
We're now selling the Nexus 5, but please don't buy it from us. Order it on Google Play and save yourself $95.
Okay, let me get this straight. So they not only said, "Hey, look, we want you to put the money to where back in your pocket and not in ours."
Yeah.
But they're going to actually even provide you where to go and do that. I mean, that's really cool.
Here's their announcement on fight against mass surveillance. Help spread the word by sharing our blog post and signing the official petition. For every share before the end of the day, we're donating $1 to the Electronic Frontier Foundation, up to a maximum of $10,000.
Wow.
So go over to linux.ting.com. See, this is why I've always talked about vote with your wallet. Support these kinds of companies. And, we also had a listener reach out to them and ask them about Ubuntu Touch, and they said they're eagerly following that project. So they're really kind of on to all of this stuff. And I think you could go check them out. Try out their savings calculator. They just lowered their data rates. Try the calculator again. See if it's even more of a deal for you than before. Linux.ting.com. And a big thank you to Ting for being so damn awesome.
That's really cool.
God.
Good guys. Good stuff.
All right, let's jump in the mumble room. Bring in the guys. Guys, we got a couple of things I want to hammer through before we jump into the Debian topic. I want to read some of our feedback, but you guys feel free to chime in on any of the feedback too. And our first email came from Dalek. Dalek, huh? Interesting. He says, "Hey Chris, I just wanted to comment on your recent snafu on LAS and your comments in Coda Radio and Linux Unplugged. I gathered you reported on something incorrectly and someone complained on Google+. This was, we mentioned I reported that the KD Plasma Next dates were firm when they weren't. He said, get over it. He says, to me, the only things that matter are, number one, you owned up to it when you found out that you were wrong. It wasn't intentional, and you're taking steps to address the issue. If you have made a pledge to be more accurate, and to me, that is all that matters. Mistakes can and will happen. It is what you do about them that makes all the difference. This is my opinion, and I will probably get trolled for saying this, but you're doing the KD project a favor by reporting on anything on the project. Instead of hitting Google Plus to complain, they should come directly to you and say, hey, Chris, you got this part wrong, and you should probably fix it. Oh, and by the way, insert a link here. This is where the post about info that's correct is happening at.
I definitely agree with the latter part, especially. I think definitely going straight to the source versus publicly bemoaning crap is definitely the way to handle something.
Yeah, for sure. Although sometimes, I mean, I don't know. See, here's where I fall down on this is I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think mistakes will inevitably happen because
Sure.
There's not a ton of original reporting happening in the Linux and open source landscape. A lot of it is blogs, it's rewrites of mailing list posts, it's pulling out company announcements and then posting them online, and then people either do meta coverage of them or they go do some research on their own and do some. It's very little actual original reporting. And so when you are trying to do some original reporting or trying to just cover some of the original reporting, there inevitably will be some errors that crop up just because that's human nature. And I think as long as, you know, we always try to follow up and make corrections in this show. And I think if the mistake is big enough, you know, we make corrections in the main show itself, and we're very clear and open about it. And plus in the subreddit, you know, we get caught pretty quickly. And I think as long as, one of the things about a podcast is you make it consumable for one episode if somebody's just doing a drive-by and they pick it up. But what you really want to do is curate a long-term community that can depend on quality of content. And I think as long as we're addressing that by continuing to do corrections and updates down the road, then that audience is served in the long run. And I think that's what really matters. So I'm always going to do my best not to have mistakes, but when they do, I'll also always do my best to make corrections.
And I think that's all you can really do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. All right. Well, next bit of feedback comes in, and this is from Red Hands Guitar. Reed Hands Guitar. Reed has guitar. Well, I'll get it eventually. Give me about 4 more tries. He says, he's following up on on an email we got at the end of Linux Unplugged last week, and the emailer said, hey, you know what? Maybe I prefer Linux not to have that big of adoption. Let's keep it tight and small, right? Make it a small community. Maybe it doesn't need to go out to the masses. And I think we all kind of kicked around and said, nah, to really be successful, we need to get wider adoption. He said, so Reed Has a Guitar says, I think I would be satisfied if Linux became as popular as a desktop OS as Mac OS is, but maybe even more would be better. I think the most beneficial kind of growth initially is to allow other kinds of growth by hobbyist users. So we start there. If we have a huge influx of hobbyists who can commit code, Linux and free software become better products and give better impressions to more casual users.
I agree up until the last point. The last point, generally speaking, the more coding and the more coders and things you come into, you do end up with better stuff. But a lot of times, little things like UX and stuff like that tend to go out the window, especially in the Linux space. So I don't know.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. I see some aspects of, like, sometimes if you build something for the geeks,
right?
That serves a point. That serves a purpose for a while. Like, sure. That does help with get you to a level of adoption on a class of user. A lot of times is sort of the trendsetter. Matt, one of the things that I know, I'm sure you must have noticed too over the last 20 years, maybe let's say, is like there used to be a day and an age when I would go to a restaurant and if somebody dropped a computer term like modem or Windows, like I would immediately pick that sucker up and be like, whoa, somebody just said something about a computer in a public place. And now these days it's common vernacular to be throwing out, Facebook.com, Twitter, whatever, right? Like, so I think in some ways you could argue that the internet used to be a place only for the geeks, that eventually, because of the work they did and then the work to bring other people to it, eventually it became appealing to the common person. And I think the Linux desktop could be like that. And the Linux desktop shares a lot of similarities with the development of the internet in some ways. The fractured nature of it, right? The competing standards, all these things. But eventually it all sort of moves forward as one big evolutionary organic beast. And I kind of feel like, in a way, this phase the Linux desktop is at right now could be its glory days in a sense, where it's for the geeks. It's really great if you're a nerd and you really want to tinker with your system. And you look at sort of the Ubuntuization of a desktop, where they're putting a lot more polish on there. They're changing things. Polish might not be the right word, but it's, they're packagizing, productizing it, going with their own display server because that fits the needs of the product, not because it might technically be the better thing for everyone in the community, but it helps them create a product that is good for general consumers. And so they're going that direction. I think what Canonical and Ubuntu are doing right now is going to be the leading edge of what's going to happen in a lot of products using Linux. And I think that's one way Linux will be brought to a lot more people. It might not be that everybody has a big tower PC with a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse hooked up to it and an Ethernet jack and power and all this kind of stuff. It might be tablets, and it might be Nest thermostats, and it might be robots hooked into your Google Plus account and all these kinds of things that are running Linux. And eventually everyone will be using Linux in every single way. It just might not be in the exact vision we have today.
That's a good point. And I think in many ways we're already well into that direction as it is, especially in the embedded markets and things like that. Because I think the desktop market, it's such a tough, it's like whack-a-mole in so many ways, trying to find that perfect sweet spot to where the market's saying, we don't care if it runs Cheetos, we just want to make sure that it's accomplishing the tasks that I want to do.
Right. Look at the huge success of Chromebooks now, right?
Yeah, exactly, because it accomplishes tasks versus what display server does it run and whatnot. And I think the what display server and that sort of thing, that stuff matters, but it matters to a very compartmentalized group of people. To people such as myself, I care, but getting someone like my wife or someone else to care, that's a little bit tougher. So it's going to be an interesting divide until we can begin to smooth out those edges, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
When we move forward, one weird, crazy device at a time that we all think is going to fail until it doesn't, like Chromebooks.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, I honestly was a big Chromebook hater. I still think it's a little wonky. I tried it. But you know what? The market speaks. And I think a lot of it's price-based, but yeah.
I think they're cute. I mean, if you have I think they're like the ideal college student, teenager kind of thing. I think they're great for that. It's like you drop it, you shrug, and you go buy a new one.
I think the Chromebook shows a version, though, where it's not just the DVR,
right,
or the closed camera system, like Humi is saying. It's like it's all devices, all consumer devices, because it seems like we just had a really great chat on Coda Radio yesterday about how what Microsoft is really up against is their whole model is software licensing, and that is completely vanishing. You can do subscription models, reoccurring subscription models, where it's essentially a license and you're getting access to the program like Adobe Creative Cloud or Office 365. But selling somebody an $80 OEM license when they go to build a product, that's going to go away. And we speculated about perhaps even Windows going completely free at some point in the next year or two, especially with this new CEO stepping in. And I think if they don't, there's really going to be no reason people don't use these free operating systems when they just need a base level OS and they're building on top of that. When you look at Chromebooks, right?
Exactly. Well, and I'm not super familiar with Windows 8, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say I assume that Microsoft still makes their business out of selling stickers. The little licensing stickers they like to put on computers. That they are the biggest sticker-based business I've ever seen. And so, if you lose that sticker, your CD becomes a coaster. And I think they need to realize that model is not only the worst customer experience possible, but as you pointed out, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Let's get out of stickers and let's maybe they can look into opening up a nice pub or something.
Well, so what really helped Windows back in the day was they had a really kind of good relationship between their desktop product and their server product. So if you ran, and that drove a lot of people to run Windows Server and Windows desktops in the business, which then drove a lot of people to buy Windows in the home because they wanted to use what they're familiar with work. I remember my stepdad specifically didn't want to buy a Mac, didn't want to use Ubuntu because the job he was working at used Windows XP, and that's what he wanted. He wanted to use exactly what they used at work at home. That way he wouldn't have a problem at all. And to be frank, I understood the logic there. I felt like okay, I can empathize. I can totally empathize with that when you're not very comfortable with computers. And so, in a sense, that's going away now with the whole bring your own device initiative. And a lot of those devices are Linux powered, primarily through Android and things like that. So Microsoft is transitioning to this whole cloud infrastructure, Azure, Office 365 subscription models, and also attempting to do the devices thing. But the problem is Linux is already there on both fronts, on the cloud front and on the devices front, and not just like a little bit, right? Like it's dominant, like it's the boss there. And so they are really going to be up. This new CEO has a ton of work. And I wonder if, because Linux is already the boss on the server space, it's already the boss on the device space, if you almost have that same thing again where, well, because we run it on the server and because I have it on my devices, I'm also going to put it on these other devices. And just for developers and for companies that are just trying to wrap their head around products and delivering a decent product, it almost just makes it easier for them to just put everything Linux because, well, we're already using that on the servers over here. We're writing code for that. We're already shipping these Android devices. We're writing code for that. So, you know what? Let's just make it all Linux. And I think that's sort of the thing we could be seeing put in place right now. I think we're seeing that, and that is what Microsoft's up against, and it's like this silent monster. It's not this big company. It doesn't have any one particular logo on it.
No, it does not.
But it's still this massive battle that I don't think they're fully equipped to fight. They're equipped to fight IBMs and Apples and Oracles, right? That's who Microsoft is armed to fight.
Microsoft, in my opinion, is going to continue to eat their own face when it comes to the consumer market. They hired who seems to be a really nice guy. I'm sure he's going to really means well and is going to do his very best, and I'm sure he's great. I don't think that, but they continue to make the same mistake they've always made, and that's, why bring in someone new that might be able to help us in our shortcomings when we can hire someone from within again? Granted, he's got some great skill sets, and he's, like I said, I'm sure he's very talented, but it's the bigger problems they're still hiring within. They really do.
They need somebody to go and do some weed whacking. Now, Bacon Drinker, you were going to make a point that you think if Windows goes free, it's better for Linux?
No, it's worse for Linux, sorry.
Oh, it's worse for Linux. Tell me. You think people will then...
It's the web browser model. You say, the web browser ideas. So, when a web browser is... when you see someone running IE, you switch them to Chrome. Or when someone's PC breaks and you reinstall it, you switch them to Chrome. Well, if someone's PC breaks, you haven't got the moral problem of torrenting Windows, so you're probably going to install Windows for free anyway.
Yeah, but who's going to want to run Metro on the? I mean, I think Microsoft is solving that problem for us. I think they are going to. I think web applications, HTML5, that kind of crap, the crap that we all hate hearing the buzz terms about, are making Windows less relevant. And I think Microsoft is doing us all a favor by making Windows less relevant. Paul Thurrott over at winsupersite.com ran a story. I think it's I can't remember what the title was, but it was a good title. And he makes the case that he goes through and lists all of the people that have lost their jobs, the entire divisions that they've done house cleanings on, and he even proposes Ballmer's loss of his job is because of what a catastrophe Windows 8 is. And he says he's talked to people in there that they think it's worse than Vista, and they think not in terms of sales, but in terms of public image, and they think that they may have set Windows back a decade, is the term they're using internally, that Windows has been set back a decade.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Not shocking, but ouch.
That's pretty, that's pretty damning. And so some people are speculating now pretty openly, well, Paul Thurrott is the person I'm talking about, but other people as well, that, maybe the reason why they went with Satya Nadella, I think is how you say the last name, Satya Nadella, is because they just really have to double down and focus on no longer making Windows the center of the Microsoft focus. Remember back, I think we all remember that quote for Ballmer saying Windows is the future of Microsoft. Hey, we want to make an Xbox, you put Windows on it. Hey, you want to make a device, put Windows on it. Hey, you need that server doing something, put Windows on it, and then load SQL on it. You got yourself a winning combo, everybody. And it was Windows this, Windows that, Windows this, Windows that. Now it's all going to be about these reoccurring subscriptions, this Office 365, Azure, and all these things. But the problem with these is they inherently have a very high run cost. And while that might work good in the rich Western worlds, it's not going to work good in some of the poorer places in this world. And it's never going to lock them in as a dominant force. They're never going to be number one in cloud-hosted services. That's already been claimed, really.
They do it to themselves too. It's like if you look at Office 365, which I've had some limited experience with. It's been a couple months. But when I looked at it, I'm thinking, okay, so compared to the Google offerings, which are free, you want me to pay for something that for a non-enterprise user isn't really compellingly different, other than maybe visually different. I don't really, they seem to shoot themselves in the foot as soon as they launch something like that. They launch these products and say, okay, how can we either overbrand it with too many versions, charge something when quite frankly no one's going to pay for it, not out of the enterprise anyway. And what the hell? I mean, it just their thinking doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's like a lack of focus. I agree.
Really is.
Craig,
we're also ignoring something kind of important, that people will just use Windows because they know Windows.
Yeah,
I've seen that change more and more, though.
That is until they have a reason not to, and there's going to be 1,000 different reasons not to. I think, even if it's like tablets, right? If you're an average user and you shift 70% of your computing workload over to a tablet when you're at home, like reading email, checking Facebook, all of these things, tablets actually in some ways better at, really. Isn't that a loss for Microsoft? Just right there, even if people are just using the Windows desktop 70% less of the time?
Well, not just that, but I also know of 3 computer technicians here in town. One of them, who's a pretty big player, is tired of offering Microsoft-only solutions and has now begun offering some Linux solutions. He's not going to say this publicly because he has a Microsoft agreement, but the point is that this is happening, and he's actually – a lot of people are saying, oh, okay, well, I want to do Windows 7 or Windows 8. Oh, I have old hardware. Oops, sorry, I'm screwed. I got to buy new peripherals because nothing's supported. And so it's becoming a value proposition for him to offer them an operating system he can still support and not look like a douchebag. So, and then tablets and things, that's more of a younger audience. There's a
I don't
pretty
know.
much
Actually, I think
45 and up. I don't know.
I think seniors. I think there's a pretty good use case, and
Really?
I say that because in our own family, some of the older folks who had computer phobias, the family got them tablets, and they've really taken to them. And one of the things, like on the Kindles, that they really like is they can really increase the size of the text, so it makes it a lot easier for them to read.
The Kindle Fires have been pretty good. Yeah, I've seen a few.
My grandma hasn't had a computer her entire life, and now is on email all the time, and she's emailing with the church group and constantly on the thing. I mean, she's like,
nice.
So for her, it's and it wasn't just her. It was also there's several family members like who were just anti-technology, but once they got their hands on one, it really was like a pretty big transformation for them. So I don't know.
And perhaps the other value for the family members too is that you're no longer you don't feel like you have to be afraid of it anymore,
right?
Like you did with a Windows box.
Right. You're not worried about the malware. You're not. Yeah, and it's so dead simple. It's like you just turn it on, right? You just turn it on and push the mail icon, honestly, for some of these people, like the barrier was the mouse. Like they just didn't know how to use a mouse. Now they can touch the thing. But Craig, you were going to make a point that it's convergence that's dooming Windows 8.
Yeah, what I've seen while I worked at Memory Express was that the biggest issues with most customers' computers were that they didn't know how to use Windows 8, and that when they went from a tablet to Windows 8, it still wasn't the same, even though they're made the same. And there's just a whole bunch of issues with people learning the new OS, and they're shooting themselves in the foot by making it too different without leaving in some key information that helps people transition. And by having a cell phone that acts like a tablet and a tablet that acts like a computer is just confusing people even more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they didn't go far enough. Like in the sense, like I think maybe the work that's being done now by folks to have that device more like role change and then try to be the same thing all the time. I think that's probably the more winning recipe. And it also makes more sense as devices get more powerful, they can afford to do that. You know what I'm talking? Like you put it in a dock hooked up to a computer, you get a desktop UI.
I think the biggest problem is the model of quote convergence they went with. Canonical, they're going with a fairly similar UI, and with Unity 8, applications should be able to run across the different platforms. The KDE Plasma interface, you'll have the Plasma ones you have on the desktop, they'll be your main Plasma interface on a tablet.
Yeah, there's Plasma Active, which is definitely very Plasma driven, and then the idea there, just like with Unity 8, would be that it would switch. And I think what we are all worried about in those scenarios is that the applications in desktop mode will feel like mobile applications. And I think that's maybe almost impossible to avoid for the first year or so, as developers are just working on this stuff, adding features and changing things based on user feedback. Because sometimes you just don't know until a couple thousand people have banged on it for a while. So,
sorry, I think the death of Windows 8 was in the desktop, not the tablet.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because if you look back at it, the uproar was really not being able to access the start menu.
No, actually, people are pretty positive about it in the mobile sense. People love the tiles. Ooh, the tiles.
Yeah, I definitely would say that I've when I was experiencing it and then listening to other people talk about it, they loved it. Some of the lower end Windows tablets, they weren't real impressed with the performance in comparison to other tablets, but they did like the layout. They felt it was easy to navigate. But yeah, the desktop was boy, that's a mess.
All right, we got to get one more.
I think a KDE tablet would own them all for looks.
We will see. Stay tuned and find out. All right, so one bit of feedback. Speaking of desktops, this is our last bit. The traditional desktop, Voodoo 6, who says he was going to make it this week, but I don't see him in here. He says, I made fun of Mate in the past, and now I feel kind of bad about it. I listened to the show and decided to go grab the live CD and give it a run in VirtualBox, and I have to say I'm pretty impressed. They've actually come a long way with Mate and made some improvements in all the right places. And also, holy hell, is it fast. Even running from a live CD in VirtualBox with compositing enabled, it just zipped right along. And then later on, he said, I went ahead and set it up on one of my workstations and been using it all morning. It's really good stuff. I felt like my opinion about the Mate desktop was changed during last week's episode, too. So that's cool to see that some other folks in the audience felt that way.
Really great.
All right, Matt. Well, before we jump into the Debian stuff, and this is why we have a big mumble room today. We got a lot of folks in there. I think people have been following this topic with quite an interest, and it's been one of these things that has just... I mean, it's been like you could have sports commentary doing a live stream of this at some point. It has really just been a heck of a thing to watch. So before we get to that, I want to thank DigitalOcean, our sponsor for this week's episode of Linux Unplugged. DigitalOcean is so great. It's simple cloud hosting, dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way to spin up a cloud server. These things are so super quick. Users can create a cloud server in about 55 seconds. I got it down to 47 seconds. I believe our record right now was at 44 seconds. Was that what it was? I haven't seen that.
I think it was. I think it was 44 because I think you had the record previously.
I did. Now I kind of want to create another one just so I can try to beat 44 seconds. I think I can do it. Because I'm getting the UI down. It's so simple and intuitive. I kind of just know where to go without even looking. I could do it without even with like one mouse tight. I don't know. Anyways, DigitalOcean, check this out. A little bit of an announcement here. DigitalOcean has locations in New York, San Francisco, Amsterdam, and now Singapore. They just added Singapore today. So congratulations to DigitalOcean. Here's what's great. Users, while you're over there and you can spin up this cloud server in 55 seconds, that's awesome, right? Sure, that's good. But check out what you get for $5. You ready for this? If you're a user of DigitalOcean for $5, you're going to get 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, a CPU, and 1 terabyte of transfer. A terabyte of transfer is really quite a bit, and I love that it's a fixed cost. Boom, I know exactly what I'm going to get. So you got to go check them out just for their intuitive control panel, and they also allow you to replicate it on a much larger scale with a really straightforward API. So go over to DigitalOcean.com and check them out. They got a great droplet system with images that are already ready to go. You can pay by the hour if you just want to do testing for a little bit. Tons of really great features. And Linux fans, which I think you might be, will appreciate that they're doing this all on top of KVM. And this is a great example of how Linux empowers a company to do a whole new category of product that just a few years ago wasn't even possible. And this is just they're taking advantage of technology built into Linux. They're using great hardware, tier 1 bandwidth, and it really just all comes together. And this is the kind of stuff as we're about to. So when we're about to start talking about systemd here in a little bit, it's this kind of stuff that when these distributions make these underlying infrastructure changes, it has such wide-reaching impacts, such ramifications, and the implementation of KVM into the Linux kernel. This is a great example of how something just blew up a whole new industry that is now providing a whole new level of service at a whole new price never possible before. And what's even better is you can get it for free for 2 months if you use our promo code Linux Unplugged February when you check out. Linux Unplugged February, all one word, will get you a $10 DigitalOcean credit. You can use that $5 server for 2 months. I've been running that $5 server for a while now, and it just, man, Linux performs like a champ, and you combine it with those SSDs and their bandwidth, it flies. It's so great.
And the fact you can actually, if you want to, like, say, bang out an Arch server, you can, and it's super fast. It's easy. What a great place to. It's like, oh, I wonder. I've heard some things about this package. I've heard it enhances or hinders something. I can try it out on the server. It's like, oh, that's what it does. Without actually having to do anything locally. It's great.
And I really like that they're big fans of the Docker project too. They're always really staying in sync with that project. They're making it so awesome to deploy applications up on the server. It's really cool. So go check them out. DigitalOcean.com. Promo code Linux Unplugged February. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for their awesome support of Linux Unplugged. Okay. So, Rotten, do you want to start by bringing us up to date on, is he in here? Rotten, are you? Yeah, Rotten, do you want to start by bringing us up to date on kind of where we're at right now with the Debian init system? Because I got to be honest, I got to make a disclaimer. After Sunday came around and we kind of looked like we were locked into systemd, I sort of stopped caring a little bit just because it seemed like a lot of drama it seemed like things were getting a little nasty, a little personal. So what's happened in the last couple of days since like say Sunday, Rodden?
Well, the main issue is that they've kind of officially decided that systemd is what they're going with, and the drama started with Ian kind of calling for a vote for Bdale to be pulled down as chairman. That kind of pretty much backfired in him, and people were starting to say that he needs to be taken out of the TC. So to kind of stave off that, the technical committee, he decided to stave off that happening. He kind of voluntarily is taking a break for a couple days, he said. And then as soon as that happened, the next day, Bdale casted his vote, which kind of solidified systemd being the choice.
And if I'm correct, tell me if I'm not, Bdale, because he's chair, in the case of a tie, his vote counts as 2 votes. So it'd be 2 votes for systemd if there's a tie, right? Anybody else know if that's true or not?
Well, I'm pretty sure it's something like that, but it wasn't necessary because basically Ian pulled himself out of voting.
And this is kind of interesting, voluntarily standing down now. Is that because, now did you guys get the impression that's because people were accusing him of having some sort of ulterior motive here? What was the reason for the step aside? Is just because emotions were getting flaring up and things like that?
It was getting really heated.
Yeah.
So whether that's why or not, but essentially when he called for the BDL to be dropped down, I think 3 people called for him to be kicked out.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
So this is kind of stuff I'm not really that big on following, but I just wanted to sort of set up what's been going on so that way people have some context of sort of the the scope of this decision that apparently it's really weighing on the Debian project here. And what has really struck me on the onset of all this is how it all seems like a foregone conclusion to me. And I think this is part of why I've been so frustrated with this whole thing, because technically speaking, systemd seems like, just from a pure technical standpoint, the superior solution. But then when you also consider the things like the CLA and other problems that would be introduced, that also seems like it clearly eliminates Upstart, unless they want to take on some sort of fork. And then you look at other solutions like OpenRC that have a lot of critics. It always seemed like systemd was the proper choice, and the fact that systemd is already available in Debian testing seemed like it made it the obvious choice. So what the hell am I not seeing here? What am I not getting? What is it that they have been debating over? What has been the big roadblock here for them making a decision on this kind of thing? And the reason why I almost sound a little upset is because it's almost getting a little embarrassing at this point.
It's Debian, though.
Well, it's pretty much done now, it seems. But I'd say the only thing they were really arguing over is 2 things: is the CLA and the other kernel connection, which basically systemd breaks that.
I guess what I'm worried about is this: are we watching sort of are we watching Debian become an ineffective project, or has it always been this bad, and this is just sort of the recent thing that highlights it? I guess does that seem like a fair question?
Well,
I think you've mentioned before in the past that these type of debates and discussions have pretty much always happened inside different Linux communities, but now with so many different mailing lists and people looking to put out news articles, the moment something gets said, it gets repeated around so many times. So I think it's just, as you've stated in the past, the speed at which we now broadcast these discussions and these disagreements has grown so much that now it seems like it's worse than I believe it really is.
Yeah, it's basically the same it's been like the same for the past 5 years at least that I can remember.
This one seems particularly bad, though.
Didn't get as heated.
And I think maybe that's why it's gotten the coverage it has. And it's not just news outlets anymore. It's just general interested bystanders are tweeting out links to the mailing list. It's every major new post is, there's 4 posts of it to Reddit. Daredevil, and I wanted to give you a chance to chime in here. What do you think?
No, what I was about just to say is that pretty much the discussions on the mailing list is always a slow communication medium, and until getting that, it's just a matter of we're constantly looking because it's an interesting project. That's it. But other decisions on Debian have been always sort of posing ethical and technical questions. They don't focus only on the technical side.
Crossroads, do you think this is a lack of focus problem?
I mean, yeah, I think that they want Debian to be available to as many people as possible, so they want it to even be available on the BSD, and systemd requires C groups that it won't run on BSD.
Popey, as our resident Upstart fan, I'm always interested to hear what you think.
I wouldn't say I'm necessarily an Upstart fan.
I kid. I'm just poking.
Yeah, I know. I'm not so sure. I mean, I mentioned last time that there's more eyeballs on this, partly because there's more eyeballs on everything because of social media and everyone wanting instant updates on everything and everyone reporting everything pretty quickly after the event occurs and keeping an eye on mailing lists, and that becomes news. But also, don't forget the other side, which is a positive side. Debian is much more popular. and much more heavily used than it ever was before. So any of these discussions that happened on a random Debian mailing list, the only people who are interested were nerds. Whereas now you've got Ubuntu users, Mint users, systemd developers, Fedora users, Red Hat users, all these people who are interested in Debian.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of focus on it, not just from the media, but also from people who have a vested interest in what goes on in Debian.
I think that is a big point to underscore right there. And Bank and Drinker, you sounded like you had a kind of a perspective from a new Linux user. Does this look like insanity from the outside?
No, so it sort of looks like it's been overblown. So the way I look at it is, from what I can see, from a newbie's perspective, it sort of doesn't matter as much as it's been shown as. Because from what I can see, if systemd isn't your thing, you can just install Upstart or OpenRC.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I think this is part of, I almost feel like there was a bigger decision being made in a sense at the same time they were picking the init system. And I feel like that decision was, do we want to unify a great part of the core of Linux in a sense? And some people feel like in part of doing that, we're throwing out a bit of the Unix philosophy. And there's this constant reevaluation in the Linux community about our Unix roots versus practical needs. And I feel like that was the meta discussion being had, and perhaps that's why the interest was so intense. And the Debian committee, technical committee, and the other Debian developers maybe felt the weight of that meta discussion. What do you guys think?
I also think, that a lot of it was emotion, to be honest. It was rather emotional discussion more than the technical one.
Go ahead, Popey.
Russ Albury posted a lengthy mail recently, which kind of sought to explain some of the stuff that went on the list on the technical committee, and the fact that these guys are all friends and they get on fairly well, and maybe people's perspective from the outside is not the same perspective as those guys on the inside have.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. Q5, why don't you chime in? I know you had something to say.
Yeah, I've talked with a lot of people recently about this, and I've noticed a trend that there seemed to be a large number of people, you were discussing about meta discussions, that a lot of people have become pro-systemd just because they're against some of the business moves that Canonical has made, and by extension want to reject Canonical by rejecting Upstart.
So it's like a form of Canonical hate in a sense to just like systemd because it's not Upstart.
Yeah, I've actually heard that statement from people before regarding systemd versus Upstart, where people have said, I don't really know much about systemd. I just don't want Upstart to get it because that's what Canonical made.
I guess there's probably always some of that going on. And I wonder too, like I look at the big, like down the road now, what these kind of events do is they look really dramatic while they're happening, but in a sense, I feel like a lot of consensus has been built around systemd now. Like I think the end result is the rest of the community just had this massive conversation and came to an agreement that they then all exerted upon the Debian community. But as a whole collective, systemd kind of went from this Lennart's interesting thing that he's building for Red Hat to, oh yeah, this is probably the way that all Linux that should go. But it's not the end of all Linuxes that don't. And I do think it does underscore this interesting consensus-making process that happens as a result of these big flare-ups. And in the end result, the community, the hive mind, comes to larger conclusions. What do you think of that?
I'm inclined to agree with you, and I think there's a lot of focus on these things at the time, but then later on we move on. Like, who really cares now that Ubuntu moved the buttons to the left-hand side? Who really cares that Ubuntu doesn't have GIMP on the CD? Who really cares that the CD the image is over 800 megabytes, so only fits on a USB stick? At the time, these things seem so important. It's like the Beatles or Justin Bieber. At the time, it seems like it's massively important to everyone on the planet right now.
I agree.
But you skip forward 3 years and nobody gives a crap.
My favorite go-to for that is the whole Microsoft Novell deal that, like, we dedicated like 3 weeks of the Linux Action Show to covering, and everybody was ready to burn Novell at the stake, and here we are, 5 years later, and it doesn't really seem to have made too much of a difference on anything. And we were all worried that like there was some sort of patent play at it, that the Samba project was doomed and all these kinds of things. It really turned out not to be a big deal.
It's interesting how that comes about in hindsight, because at the time, that was it was perceived as just like the clouds are turning blood red and the moon's going to fall out of the sky and everything.
And I think the problem with this kind of consensus building is there are now tools available to manipulate the hive, and like sort of, and I think Lennart and crew kind of comes out looking like the good guys, and not the good guys, but kind of comes out looking better on this whole thing. And really that was because he was able to go to his own Google Plus feed and have a platform to influence a lot of people and what they were, how they viewed it. And I think
you really think Lennart comes out being the good guy in this?
I do, not necessarily in terms of like the traditional sense, but in terms of like the most logical, maybe. I don't know, like having the clearer perspective of the group. That's not the right way to put it either. I think he comes away looking like he was right in the end. Maybe is that the way to put it?
So he may well be technically right, but I challenge you to go back over the last 6 months of Google Plus and whatever other mailing lists and find every occasion where Lennart has taken pot shots at Upstart, pointing out bug reports, pointing out things that Upstart does or doesn't do.
No, right? I agree.
Now go back and find Upstart developers doing the same thing, and you know what? You won't find them.
I agree. That's not. I don't mean all of that feed. I just mean like during the heat of the discussion, he's able to go and have a platform that he was able to influence a lot of people's thinking on the matter. I mean, I think if you look at like r/Linux, a lot of people were just repeating things that he posted on his G Plus feed as if it was their own ideas and their own concepts. And
it reminds me of an American presidential campaign.
Exactly.
You know, all these kind of Google Plus messages need to say underneath, "My name's Lennart Pottering, and I approve of this message."
Right.
You know,
that's exactly what I mean, and I think that's why we have to be a little bit worried about this form of consensus building, because it is ripe for manipulation. And that's my point. Is that
I gotta say, most of my opinion regarding this matter actually came out of these Linux Unplugged discussions. And I kind of figured it was either going to be OpenRC or a systemd. Nothing against Canonical, nothing technically against Upstart, but I don't think they would have chosen that for the CLA.
Crossroads, I want to give you a chance to jump in too.
I don't really think that anyone came out looking like a good guy, because the systemd people, like Popey said, were going through and filing the bug reports, and it almost looked petty, and then the Upstart folks were just kind of silent. So I don't think when there's this kind of arguing and this kind of tit-for-tat stuff, no one looks like a good guy.
Yeah, good guy might not have been the right way to put it. I was just trying to think of a way to kind of frame it where I think people kind of rallied around the points he was making, and kind of decided to pick up on what he was championing.
Well, I think he had technical accuracy on his side. You know, he was able to point out the odd bug report here and there, or point out where systemd might be technically superior, and he certainly has that on his side. And it's very easy to rally round someone who is articulate and able to express how their product is technically better than someone else's. But you don't have to be a douche when you do it.
That is sort of the underscore. Is like if you can manage to do all that without offending a bunch of people, yeah, that's sort of a win-win. Bacon Drinker, I wanted to let you chime in on the sort of the state of the debate.
Yeah, so all I've got to really say is, as intense as it was, Linux debate is sort of meant to be this way. It's sort of, I was watching a TED talk with Linus Torvalds' boss, and he explained how intense debate comes up with a better decision at the end of the day. And I sort of think that people saying that the way the debate was not gone so politely, if you will, is kind of wrong. I think a debate should be this way, and it's worked out better.
It's actually almost been sickeningly polite in some ways. Like, here's B. Dale's announcement that they're going with systemd. He writes, "Thank you, Anthony, for your analysis of the votes. Per 6.3.2, I used my casting vote to choose D as the winner. Therefore, the resolution reads, we exercise our power to decide in case of overlapping jurisdictions 6.1.2 by assuring that the default init system for Linux architectures in Jessie should be systemd. Should the project pass a general resolution before the release of Jessie asserting a position statement about issues of the day on init systems, that position replaces the outcome of this vote and is adopted by the technical committee on its own decision." That's a really interesting way to speak. It sounds like it's like legislation being passed.
Except the difference is things are actually happening there.
That's true.
Debian actually has activity. No, the bigger thing there is I think that it's not only sounds official, but it'd be hard not to bust into laughter doing it. Really, I would think.
Yeah, I mean they want to make it official. I suppose they are in a way making history with some of these decisions.
Sure.
So I guess there is that element to it. All right, guys. Well, any other comments before we round off this discussion? Anyone else want to chime in?
I will just I would just like to say that actually earlier someone mentioned that the coverage, like, it wouldn't matter because we thought it was important at the time, but I think actually covering such issues sometimes is what provokes people to think about it as an issue and actually try to find the best resolution and not attempt misleading directions.
Yeah, it does make for interesting back listening too when you go back and listen to the issues of the day. In a way, it's sort of a living documentation of what happened in some sense. You know, you get some of the nooks and crannies of the issue that you don't get when you look back on it 3-5 years later. So it's kind of fun from that standpoint to talk about today. And you know, open source and Linux so much is about building one piece at a time, and it's at that in itself inherently calls for analysis and discussion about the piece you're working on, because every future piece after it is built on top of it. So every piece matters in a sense. And I think this one in particular, because of the weight of the overall decision, because of the meta discussion going on in the greater community that's been going on for a couple of years now, I think this one in particular reached beyond just the interest of bloggers and podcasters and etc. I think it really reached to the general user. Like Popey made the excellent point. It affects so many people now because the Debian project has grown, and you know, with other huge projects like Ubuntu based on it, it's an important player now. And what's really interesting about it is you could easily make it one of our most important players, and it is truly community driven. And we have just watched this process unfold. I mean, who knows what kind of discussion there was internally at Red Hat before they set off on systemd. We probably could glean some of it from mailing lists, but I bet you don't get the full scope like you do here with Debian. And it's just kind of interesting to watch a truly community-based project go through this process. And you know, I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing it took them as long as it did. It just I wish it didn't get as heated, and I wish maybe people would give folks a little more slack and consider that, you know, they are watching something from the outside. I think
I think that's true. I mean, we do need to be sensitive to the fact there may be a lot of underpinnings we're not aware of, and I have no problem with the amount of time that it takes. But I think unless there was actual like threats made against people or whatever, I do think the emotional side of it really is going to be hard to justify. But the rest of it, I would definitely agree. I think that there's no question there's got to be things we're not aware of that could definitely get people a little bit riled. Yeah, but but we're all adults, guys. I mean, we got to. At some point, you got to, like the person that stepped away. That's the right approach. That's good.
That probably was a good decision. You know, if you're still kind of a little stuck on all of this, well, I got good news, because it's one of these things that's maybe hard to wrap your brain around until you can play it as a video game. Well, good news, we actually have a video game version of the Ubuntu init system debate. I'll have it linked in the show notes.
You're kidding me.
No, it's for real. It's like it's here we go. I'm playing it right now. It's an attorney game. The Debian init case, Great Emerald's Trial. And it explains to you what the hell's going on with all of this in video game style. Here we go. Wow. Look at
that. There we go.
Yeah.
What kind of achievement do you get if you get the right one?
This is so 80s awesome right now, or early 90s awesome. And so look, I mean, come on, how is this not the best way? This is like Final Fantasy meets the Debian init debate.
I'm really disappointed that your idea of a game for this is not Flappy Bird.
Oh, jeez.
It kind of felt like watching somebody play Flappy Bird, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, anyways, I'll have a link to the Debian init case in the show notes if you want to get in on some of that craziness. And then, you know, you get to learn a little something and have fun.
This is true.
Maybe next time they'll take Popey's advice and make the Flappy Bird edition. Assuming that...
well, and if you install it on your phone, then you can flip it on eBay for $50,000 or whatever.
Gosh, isn't that crazy?
I know.
All right, so Ben, a 14-year-old listener, writes in, and he says, hey there, Chris and Matt, I'm a 14-year-old Linux user who would self-proclaim himself as a Linux geek, and I'm an avid listener of Linux Unplugged. Well, hello, Ben. He says, I use Arch, wow, how about that? Inspired by the Arch Challenge, and roll my own Arch Linux Raspberry Pi LAMP server, as well as being a happy user of a custom rig built by myself. Oh, Ben, I want to adopt you. He says, and the more I look around, the amount of Linux advocates of my generation is a very small number, and it worries me. It worries me, and surely could be of some concern to people of your generation, as kids aren't getting sufficient education about computers. Other kids my generation in my so-called IT classes don't seem to be educated enough unless they really go and look for it, like myself, which most people will not do. Personally, I think that kids of my generation, probably of others, are not being stretched and not getting the sufficient grounding they need. I could be arrogant here, although I reckon I could teach my IT class better than my minimum wage teacher does. Which brings me on to my next, well, it sounds like you might be able to, which brings me on to my next point. Linux doesn't seem relevant to a lot of people, and it seems somehow minor to them. I have largely covered my thoughts on the matter of Linux's popularity, which I cover on a blog that I call The Linux Situation. It'd be great if you would just look over it and share your thoughts. Thanks, guys, and keep up the good work. So Ben says that a lot of people don't find Linux relevant anymore, and the darn kids, now we've talked about this a little bit, the darn kids aren't finding Linux that interesting. And I just saw an article, and I don't have a link to it, but I just saw an article recently that said Linux should be part of IT curriculum. And that doesn't that kind of make sense to...
For an IT curriculum, it makes complete sense, yeah.
Like if you want to teach computers... Teach them like to load a Linux distribution. You can learn so much about disk partitioning and like if you're really taking a computer class, it almost does seem like a disservice to use Windows because it's like teaching somebody how to work on a car and you give them a car with the hood sealed.
That's right. Because I know IT folks now that are suffering because of that. They specialized in Windows and now are having to backtrack and learn stuff that they could have had the opportunity to learn a long time ago. So it's actually become a hindrance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was just going to say that I think the biggest part of all this is mainly like, if you teach them one specific technology, then a few years later you have this big setback. And what should really be the core part about it is teaching, okay, here's the basic parts of the computer, here's how to get a good sense for being able to read error messages or whatever, to basically give the foundation for a flexible mind about computing so that, as time goes on, you're able to adjust to whatever various things may come in just because you have enough of a foundation that you're able to reason your way through anything that gets put in front of you. And of course, knowing how to use Google or whatever to find anything that you just can't get.
Do your own research, yeah.
Well, that sounds good, but it's highly debatable what is a good foundation. So that would be hard to do a curriculum for.
Yeah, that's true.
So the guy in here says he's part of this generation. He has some thoughts on this. Go ahead, the guy.
Hi, Chris Less. So I'm part of this newfangled teenage generation, and I just wanted to say that I really agree that there's not enough education about this sort of thing. I go to a school with over 1,000 kids, and of them, I'm one of maybe like 5 people that's heard of Linux, and I'm the only person that actually uses it that I'm aware of. It's just a matter of people don't know.
Go ahead.
Everything that I learned about Linux was just on my own. I mean, I first heard
self-taught
about it through a a conference, and most people don't go to that sort of thing.
Yeah. Urban 120, go ahead.
Yes, I think that I heard first of Linux one time that I was with some guys that know a lot about computers, but I actually started using Linux because I started watching Linux action show and I figured out that it is awesome.
Oh, thanks.
I'm 16 years old, and in my school we mentioned Linux that it exists, but in school we use Word, we use Microsoft. Everything is based on not free software.
Right.
Everything is from Microsoft or from other companies.
Yeah.
When we give an assignment for school, we need to have it in font Times New Roman, which is from Microsoft, and dots file, and everything is based on proprietary solutions.
All right, Bitpuffin, go ahead.
I was just thinking that this doesn't only apply to like operating systems, but also like software in general. Like, for example, in my school with 3D program, we learned Maya and Photoshop, but it would have been better, I think, if we learned GIMP and Blender, because that we could use after school.
Yeah, you could go get it on
commercially.
Your own. I know.
Yeah,
that's
we could do like freelance work and stuff. So yeah.
Crossroads, you're from this the generation we're speaking of. What do you think?
I go to a school of probably about 2,000. There are very, very few kids who know what Linux is, and I can say the word Linux or the word open source, and I just get kind of this look like, What are you talking about? Actually, our homecoming king this year is a Linux nerd. He's one of my best friends. But anyway, I would love for there to be some basic computer education, because I've had people ask me why the internet's broken and why. I mean, it's just, there needs to be something, and even if it's not Linux, there needs to be something like, this is the internet.
Yeah. I mean, I do worry about getting down a path of, like you see on Star Trek, where the Captain Kirk arrives to the planet and it's being run by one giant computer and nobody knows how it works, and they all think it's their god and they all worship it or something. Witherdon, I know you wanted to make a point. Go ahead.
I think the problem goes further than that. I mean, I've just completed university, and the number of people that couldn't even install basic software was ridiculous. So I don't even think they're teaching anything at all in IT classes. So it's pretty much a joke.
Isn't this why tablets are seeing the success they are? Because it is really just so much easier for people to pick them up and install apps. I mean, I'm looking at people who've never used a computer in their lives, and they're in their 50s, 60s, and even 70s, and they're picking these things up, and they're installing applications like Netflix and Kindle, and they're using them, and it's just blowing my mind.
I mean, there's still kids my age who, I had one girl come up to me and ask me, how do I install this app? And she was an iPhone. It's not like it's even difficult. She didn't even know how to install an app.
Well, there is that. Daredevil, I wanted to give you a chance to make your point.
So I actually think we can have a different view for a while on this matter. I think in the overall picture, IT education has been focused on application usage and getting just whatever the school is sponsored to sort of make advertising propaganda. And at that point, I don't think it's a matter of what the school teaches, but actually, if we look at the user base that Linux has been pretty much a matter of getting people into learning on their own, and they actually become much more informed. And at that point, I think it benefits the overall community and helps actually introducing users not just as users, but as also contributors or part of the community. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it could be improved, and I think actually shows like this do their part on putting the word out.
I hope so. And I think you're right, to an extent, that if it's important enough and people need to get a job done, they eventually come across it. In a lot of cases, people don't know about Linux is simply because they've never needed to solve a problem that it solves. All right, well, we're going to wrap up with the last two here, MWfer or MWoofer. M-Woofer? I like that. Make your point.
I apologize for that. I never really thought about the name ever being pronounced out loud. It's just my first two initials and then the first four characters of my last name.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say that what I've been seeing more and more of is people developing this blind spot where it's not quite fear, but more just willful ignorance of some kind, where they just say, well, it's a computer, I probably can't understand it, I'm not going to try to understand it. And, when they have to do something on the computer, they go in and they flail around, but it's like they're developing this mental block that maybe at a lot of points they aren't even realizing is operating, that's just keeping them from picking up information.
Right. It's a computer, therefore I'll never learn how to do it, so therefore I just won't. That kind of thing. Bacon Drinker, do you want to take us out with your last point?
Yeah, I think the problem lies in modern technologies. And I'm 16, so I'm from the new generation. But when you go back even 10, 20 years, when you bought something, you had a screw in the back of it, and you could open it quite easily with a Phillips screwdriver and look inside. But nowadays, you've got like Torque 5 screws on the MacBooks and glued together phones, and there's no incentive to go ahead and open this stuff.
Right. In fact, there's every incentive not to open it.
Exactly.
You damage it and void the warranty in the case of a glued phone and things like that.
Yeah, but you don't truly own a device until you void its warranty.
That's very good, right? Very true. Or until you've taken it apart and put it back together again. Let's take the rest of this in the post-show discussion, because I think that's a good point to wrap up in a response to Ben's email. And Ben, I hope some of that's helped provide some insights. And one thing you can always do is show folks, wait for folks to have a need to be solved, a problem to be solved, and show them how Linux solves that problem. And I think once you show them what it can do for them, maybe it's maybe they want to finally get into some sort of application development. Maybe they want to set up a file server at home and run Plex. Honestly, it always depends on the person. That's one of the reasons I used to love Compiz, is I used to show Compiz off and at work and clients, and people just like, oh my God, what is that? How do you do that? Oh, this is Linux. Let me show you. And that was a door opener. And nowadays, I just had somebody over at my house, a total computer noob, and they were just blown away by Plex. Blown away by Plex. Could never see anything like Plex. Can't believe something like Plex exists. It's incredible. It's like, well, here's what you need. And that could be an example. Well, here, let me help you set up a Linux box. We'll install Ubuntu here. We'll put Plex media server on it. Bob's your uncle. Bob's your uncle. All right, Matt. Well, I think that's a good spot to wrap up here for this week's episode of Linux Unplugged. I know I mentioned it earlier, but you got to come over on Sunday to jblive.tv, everybody, and watch us. We're going to be doing Linux Action Show 300. Don't worry. I think we'll probably release it for download if you can't make it live. But, no, that's coming up. Yeah. All right. Well, very good, Matt. Also, I want to remind folks you can also watch this show live and participate in our virtual lug. We do this at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. You can also go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar, and then you just get it converted in your local time. You don't have to do the time math. And you can hang on our awesome chat room. Thanks, chat room. And thank you, Matt. I'll see you on Sunday.
See you then.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning this week's episode of Linux Unplugged. See you right back here next week.